think we're done is the point that he's making. I don't think there's any reason.
The point is, you're welcome, I guess. Because I'm your nuclear deterrent. It's working. We're safe. America is secure. You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor. I have successfully privatized world peace.
Show on HBO, but I also have been watching so much Marvel for this podcast in particular that I feel like I don't have time.
Yeah, well, and that's what I needed, like some counter programming to all the Marvel. I was watching Deadwood before that, in between all the other movies.
Did you watch the new Deadwood thing?
Yeah,
was it
so I had watched the first 2 seasons like a million years ago, and then I rewatched all seasons 1 and 2, and then watched season 3 for the first time.
Welcome to Deadwooding.
And then we should do that, and then watch the movie last week.
Yes,
but yeah, it was dope.
For real though, welcome to Marveling.
Yes, welcome. Thanks for stopping by.
I'm Courtney, and that's Tyler.
Yeah,
he's doing real good. Now he just wants to talk about Deadwood. So we're talking about Iron Man again.
We're a podcast, and we talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe in chronological order.
Yes, we are doing that. And now in our chronological order is Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2. So if you weren't Iron Man'd out from the last Iron Man,
he's bringing his friends in this one. Iron Man 2.
Iron Man.
Yeah, it's just one word, Iron Man.
I'm Tony Ironman. I had totally forgotten why I had only watched this movie a couple times, and then the intro reminded me very quickly.
Yeah. Mickey Rourke is...
My first note on this movie is Mickey Rourke is the fucking weirdest.
Well, I think from sort of like a metatextual level, Mickey Rourke is sort of the like cautionary tale of Robert Downey Jr. if he had had another 10 or 15 years of hard drinking and drugging. True. And maybe I'm speculating, but it just seems like Mickey Rourke was ridden pretty hard. And
oh my God.
He was pretty wet when he...
was put away.
Yes.
Before we get too far into Iron Man 2, spoiler warning, we tend to talk about all kinds of Marvel movies, especially throughout the cinematic universe. So if you haven't seen any Marvel movie, maybe give them a watch.
Why the fuck are you listening to this podcast if you've never watched an Iron Man or
Some people like to digest their media in different ways. Yeah. You never know.
Well, and we're like pretty cool and hip and likable, so.
What if we get people into Marvel with this podcast?
Whoa.
High five. So Iron Man 2. So this one is a thing. It's a
movie. It happened.
It's a movie. It's definitely there. I kind of did it at the end last time we watched Iron Man. But this movie only has a Metacritic score of 57. It's not super well received. On IMDb, it's at a 7.0, and it's got a 74% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that
fresh.
Huh?
It's fresh.
It's still fresh, but not that fresh.
Funky fresh.
It's like a couple days past its fresh.
A little mushy when you bite into it.
Yeah, it's like it's still a good tomato, but do you really want to eat it?
Yeah. It's good for like a tomato sauce or something.
To maybe cook it in with some other really good tomatoes. But yeah, I think it's a very important stepping stone in Tony Stark's arc.
Yeah, and they're this is where they really start to hit the ground running with the MCU the MCU and building out the world and all of that.
This is the first movie where we see Black Widow. We get a lot of Nick Fury in this movie. He's not just relegated to a end credit scene. Yeah. But it's just one of those movies that like it has some really good parts, but I think it's like kind of.
Well, and I think the Marvel Studios hadn't established its formula yet. Yeah. So it kind of goes in some weird directions, and
I think it's kind of hampered by like a bad villain.
Yeah. Well, it does the sort of stupid superhero trope of like second movie, 2 villains.
Right.
It's
more people to
it's just throwing more things at it. Where some of the other movies, I think they they don't stick to that trope or whatever.
Right. No, it's a sort of thing where it's like it's two villains and it's one villain obviously wanting to be in charge, but of course he's not actually in charge because he's a whiny little pissant. And the guy who's actually in charge is really hard to believe. It's so hard for me to believe that Mickey Rourke is smart enough to do this.
Yeah.
Which, sorry, Mickey, but like, just the way that he looks, the way that like he talks, does he look like a super genius to you? Because
I mean, he's like a hacking wizard, though.
I know, he just like typed, and I'm like, I don't even think Mickey Rourke could like type with his sausage fingers like that quickly. Like it's
sorry, Mickey Rourke.
It just, when he's got the whips on his hands, like that I believe.
Dope. Give me those dope whips.
They're cool, but like I would imagine
they're not cool.
I think they're cool.
Okay.
I think those are actually cool, but it would make more sense if Justin Hammer had made those for him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. They're trying to build out the legacy aspect of Tony Stark and
is he Whiplash?
Connecting to connecting him to Howard Stark and making him sort of another evil version of Tony Stark. Obadiah was evil Iron Man, and Anton Vanko is evil Tony Stark, Iron Man, whatever. So
evil Tony Stark because also his dad was evil Howard Stark. Like,
yes, yeah. Well, and Justin Hammer is like bumbling Tony Stark, kind of like
It's all of these like lesser versions of Tony Stark is what these.
And I think the movies that have the compelling villains like Loki or name another compelling villain.
Thanos.
Yeah, where they're not just like evil character, evil version of the character. Loki is sort of the opposite of
Killmonger
Thor.
in Black Panther.
He's not strong. He's more, Loki has the intellect and all of that, and he's more mischievous. And
these guys, it just seems like they don't have any other point or purpose in the world except to get rid of Tony Stark, which is just kind of like, okay, like what's
and the movie does a good job of sort of letting Tony Stark free, and he's out there pissing everyone off by being awesome or whatever, and the senators swearing at him and
you're a jerk, Mr. Stark.
Fuck you. He says fuck you
I know
at
he
the
does,
press conference or at the Senate hearing or whatever.
It does. Which this movie starts with
let's go to back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning. This movie starts in Russia with are they both named Anton Vanko? It's Anton Vanko and Anton Vanko Jr., right? Am I right or wrong?
I don't know. I don't care.
Well,
stupid.
so there's Vanko Sr., who's dying, seeing Tony
Old Vanko.
Older Vanko, old
Vanko.
He's seeing Tony Stark on the news and shouts something intelligible, and then
they're watching the press conference from the end of Iron Man,
and then he dies after seeing that.
Yes,
when then Mickey Rourke has
he should have been Iron Man.
Yes,
it was his legacy to be Iron Man.
And then Mickey Rourke has a weird little scream when his dad dies, which is actually subtitled as roaring, like a lion's roar. And I was just like,
well, it was kind of like guttural, wasn't it? Like,
it was weird.
Mickey Rourke kind of looks like a lion. I could see him like, he kind of looks like Ron Perlman from Beauty and the Beast.
Oh my God.
Beauty and the Beast show or whatever.
And so he watches his press conference, dad dies, and then he's like, well, I can build an arc reactor, and just hammers one together.
Well, his dad and Tony's dad built one to begin with.
I know, but like the whole point
Anton Vanko is like, I'm also Tony Stark, but I'm like,
the whole point
weird.
of Iron Man 1 was that they couldn't like get a small enough arc reactor for Obadiah, but then
Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps. So Anton Vanko built it in his ratty apartment with a box of scraps.
Yes. And just, yes. So,
and we've already established that he's super smart.
Sure. Sure. I believe that. And we don't know what he's going to do with it yet, but we cut to Tony.
Rockstar Tony.
Squealing guitar, making his entrance at the brand new Stark Expo.
Yes. Well, I think the only thing that would have made that scene doper is if he came in with a screaming electric guitar flying through the air,
like the guy in Mad Max,
yeah.
like yeah. And he has his cool little like de-suiting situation,
Yes.
which honestly, I just think that these movies turned into like, what are really cool ways to get Tony in and out of his suit.
Yes,
Like,
yeah, they want to up the game, and he's got the Rockettes dancing behind him.
It was very Captain America. He's got his dancers, which I thought this was cool to see the Stark Expo after seeing the Expo in First Avenger.
Yeah.
It was a cool way to see it like evolve, and then to see Howard on the screen, which John Slattery is that his name? Yes. Cool. I always forget. As Howard Stark, who I like so much more as Howard Stark.
Yeah, well, he is the more older, not grizzled, but he's
the more older.
The more older.
The more older you get, the more better.
But he has the more feel of old.
He's yes, I kind of understand what you're going for.
I don't really understand what I'm trying to say, but
he seems more like a
Dominic Cooper is. I almost said Dominic Monaghan. That would have been a weird Howard Stark, but Dominic Cooper is sort of he's the younger, suaver,
right,
more Tony Howard Stark,
right.
And John Slattery is more of the Walt Disney,
right.
Howard Stark,
right,
which they modeled him in this movie after Walt Disney.
And then Tony is subpoenaed to go testify before the Senate committee because, you know, he's Iron Man. And
what is the, like, I know nothing about subpoenas and all that, but what is the time frame of a subpoena? Like I think they gave him 24 hours to travel,
which I don't think is unrealistic.
Okay. I didn't buy it.
I mean, he doesn't like being handed things, so we don't actually know.
Well, but it says 24.
Well, I know it says like 9:30 the next morning or something,
and it's like midnight or whatever.
But yeah, I don't think that that's unrealistic, especially for like a situation like this.
I guess where it's like a timely thing
and it also might be a sort of thing that he's been invited to for a while and was just like, I'm not going, and then they had to subpoena him, sort of thing.
With a pretty lady.
With a pretty lady who's actually she's in House of Cards. Did you ever watch that?
Kate Mara.
Yeah.
She's also the Invisible Girl from...
I hated her in House of Cards. She was so annoying. But yeah, so he ends up going to the Senate hearing, and basically they're asking him again to give his tech over to the U.S.
suit.
I want your suit, man.
Share your suits with us.
To the U.S. government because they want to use them as weapons. And Tony is like, of course, not on board with that because that's a lot of power to be giving to someone, of course. Someone being the government.
Well, and especially as Tony Stark is someone who he thinks of himself as the smartest person.
Right.
And he doesn't trust anyone with his technology. Which
I think is totally valid.
Well, I do too, but I think that it speaks to his ego, right, where he is going to want to be in control.
Right. And so he refuses to, and they get their current weapons contractor, which is where we're introduced to Justin Hammer.
Yes.
Who is the bumbling Tony Stark.
I like Sam Rockwell. I love
Sam Rockwell.
I like him in this movie.
He does great in this movie.
Yeah.
He does. But he's essentially relegated to playing a 2-step behind Tony Stark, which is like,
well, but it speaks to what Tony says in this hearing, that everyone else in the world is behind him.
Right.
And when he hacks into the screens,
shows North Korea.
I need these screens. Yeah. And he shows all of the reality of what they're trying to say, that North Korea, yes, they're building this technology, but it's nowhere near.
Well, and I love when he then just like completely shames Justin Hammer, which is so funny.
And that because there's a guy in that suit and it like twists all the way around. Yes. That guy's back is broken.
The man's dead.
He said that he was alive, but if he is alive, he is crippled and...
That man's dead. Before we get too far, at the Stark Expo, there's a little boy in the Iron Man helmet that Tony signed something for.
I don't subscribe to this.
You don't subscribe to that theory?
No.
Oh, I thought it was cute.
Well, it is, but it's unless they reference it in Far From Home... I'm not going to subscribe to it.
To get this theory out in the open, the theory is that this little boy that Tony signed something for is Peter Parker.
Yes.
I think it's really cute.
Tyler I do too. Hates it. I just think it's like...
I don't think it makes timeline sense.
Well...
that boy's too young to be Peter Parker.
I think it...
How old is Peter Parker in Homecoming?
He's 15.
Is he? 15, 16?
Yeah.
And this is 2008.
Homecoming takes place 8 years after after Avengers. No, it's supposed to be 6 or 5 years after is what I think what they've actually said. Even though it says 8 years after the Battle of New York, it's really 5 years after. So it would be, this movie is 2 years before the Battle of New York. So it would be, I would say 7 years from
this
Iron Man to
Spider-Man. Well, Peter Parker actually shows up a little bit earlier in Civil War. So, but anyways, so it could.
Wait, he was in Civil War? Spider-Man 2.
It could potentially be Peter Parker. It's probably not.
Yeah, well, and I think
but I think it's cute.
Yeah, Kevin Feige came out in the last couple of years and basically retconned that and said that was Peter. Like, when they were making this movie, that wasn't Peter Parker.
No, of course
they didn't even fucking know who he was.
No.
But I
don't own
think
the rights to Spider-Man.
I think that it is cool. It's a little convenient, and I like the idea of more people being inspired by Tony Stark than just like
right.
the one Peter Parker Spider-Man.
No, only Peter looks up to him.
Yeah.
Literally,
well, but I mean, it shrinks the world down a little bit.
It does.
And so I think for me to feel comfortable with this.
Do I make you uncomfortable, Tyler?
Yeah. No, for me to accept that, I would need Peter to reference it somehow when he's talking about Tony, maybe when he's crying about Tony's being dead.
When he's crying on the plane to Happy, he's like, remember when I was at the Stark Expo?
No, I don't need that. But I just think it is a little silly. Sorry. No, I hate it.
Okay. That was a strong word.
Yeah.
Oh.
Move on. Next. What's next?
Moving on.
Next song.
Moving on, we find out that the arc reactor in Tony's chest, because he's using a
palladium or
yes,
palindromium or
palladium, because he's using a
unobtainium.
I want to say a chemical, but it's not a chemical.
Unobtainium.
That's Avatar. Because he's using palladium, it's slowly killing him because you're not supposed to have palladium in your body for whatever reason.
Yeah, I feel like he must have all kinds of cancer or something. Like,
oh yeah, I don't really know what's going on there. But we find out the arc reactor is essentially killing him, and the more that he uses it with his suits and stuff, the more is entering into his bloodstream, and it's bad. It's bad news bears all around. I don't understand it. I'm not super smart, so
you dumb.
And Jarvis very quickly is like, there's nothing else. This is all that you could use. So, fuck, right? What are we gonna do? But in this time frame of us finding out that this is killing him and Pepper coming in, and he's starting to go through these stages of accepting his own death to an extent, because he's like starting to give things away. Like, we don't really know it yet that's what he's doing. Like, he gave away his entire modern art collection, which Pepper comes in and yells at him about.
Yeah.
And then he's like, here's the keys to the company. Like, so he's
definitely, his priorities have shifted,
right.
And he's all in.
Right. And he's all in, and he's all in for Pepper, and he thinks that she's going to do a great job, which obviously, yes, I think she's been running this company for a lot longer than anybody's ever known.
Although now that he gives her the company, which is great, and there's no pushback from anyone, which is cool, but her job still is just putting out all of his fires.
Yes. Obviously. Yeah. So he gives her the company. They kind of celebrate it. And we very quickly meet Natasha, not actually as Natasha yet.
Natalie Rushman.
Natalie Rushman is what she's introduced as she's the girl from Legal. And they're signing over the company. Tony's boxing. Tony wants one. That's what he says to Pepper, which I love. This, it's obvious that they've all like gotten very comfortable with each other, just because the banter back and forth he and Gwyneth Paltrow have with each other is really great. His banter with Jon Favreau is really great. Like, as Happy, I love it so much. But yeah, so we meet Black Widow, and at this point, like, we knew Scarlet was cast as Black Widow. So like, we as the audience kind of knew this in advance.
Maybe. Well, if you don't know, if you're not following all of those things and don't know who Black Widow is, you may not know what's going on. And she wasn't like these movies helped to make her like a breakout star too. Right. So I don't know if it was as glaring, but maybe I could be wrong. I mean, I'm never wrong, but
I feel like seeing this movie, I knew that she was not just a random secretary. I don't I can't.
Yeah, well,
remember.
I mean, you see her kick Happy's ass and do the first instance of the leg scissor. And
I mean, like going into it knowing that she was cast as something like bigger than that. I don't know if I knew Black Widow specifically, but I feel like I knew.
Well, and they probably signed her for a
I want to say like in the trailer,
anyway,
like the shot of her, like the really iconic shot of her in that hallway with the super curly hair and the catsuit was like in the trailer. So like I feel like we knew that
all right,
she
fine,
was.
you knew.
Oh,
maybe I didn't know, and I just didn't want to admit it.
why are you so aggressive? But yeah, so she gets introduced, and they decide they're going to the Grand Prix as.
Just wait and see how aggressive I get when we have our Hulk episode.
Oh God, you're leading that episode because I don't want anything to do with it.
I'm gonna Hulk out.
They go to the Grand Prix. They go to Monaco and have a real great time.
Yeah, we get to meet up with Angie Everhart, Christine Everhart.
Yes, again she's interviewing. I just want to call him Sam Rockwell. She's interviewing Justin Hammer.
Yeah, her real life husband.
No shit, really?
Yeah, I don't know if they were married before this or if this was
how they met.
But
I
yeah,
didn't
they're
realize
married.
that. Oh, that's cute.
Oh,
I'm like cute inside.
okay, I'm sorry.
All cute inside. And we had seen before this Vanko in Russia getting tickets to this Grand Prix, like really shadily in a back alley, because he's got his whips ready to go. He's ready to Catwoman out.
Yep.
And decides that the Grand Prix is a great time to attack Tony, I guess. Sure. I mean, there's like some elements to it. Like, how did he know that Tony was going to drive?
What was his plan? Because if Tony didn't make the impulsive decision to drive, then he was just going to chop the cars up and make a big scene and then make Iron Man appear, maybe, I guess. But worked. I don't know. It's a little... There was a few things where Tony does something like that perfectly fits in and makes the plot move forward. I think Tony hiring Natasha, if Tony didn't hire her, how was she going to get into his inner circle or whatever? You know what I mean?
Right.
She was placed there to keep an eye on him, but he puts her there.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think there's a few sort of convenient plot contrivances to make the...
Well, I feel like Nick Fury could have placed her in Stark Industries, and she's a beautiful woman, and would have just known.
I know, but it's just like... I feel like they're assuming that Tony's going to be a dog, and Tony's a dog. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's not a bad assumption.
I know, but...
Because he's not hit his like character arc yet of realizing that he needs to be with Pepper. Which is, he actually says at the very end, when he says to Nick Fury, when Nick Fury's like, yeah, you're not... We want you as a consultant.
I'm not there yet.
Okay. But he says, like, I'm a one-woman man now. Like, I'm, you know, like, he is known just for being, like, a super... Playboy.
I guess I'm sometimes critical of those things where it's it is still convenient that
it's super convenient. All of this whole Monaco thing is just like super convenient. Like I don't have any idea how Vanko would have known that he was like going to this, like aside from it just being a really like rich person event.
Well, and he has a car in the race, so I guess it would be safe to assume that he would
probably head there. But we completely skipped past our introduction to Don Cheadle as Rhodey now, which they kind of like had a teasy sort of reveal of him. He comes into the Senate hearing, and you just have a shot of him from behind, and
he basically tells tells Tony Stark and the audience that he's here and we all have to deal with it. Which at the time I was not happy.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
I liked Terrence Howard, and I didn't not like Don Cheadle, but I didn't like change. It was scary.
Don Cheadle, the Terrence Howard Don Cheadle thing, and Edward Norton to Mark Ruffalo, those are our only big like switch ups in this whole universe, right?
Yeah, I mean there's a few minor ones. One of the Warrior 3 from Thor gets recast. I think Fandral maybe, I can't remember. And I think that's really it. Maybe a few other minor characters, but as far as main Avengers characters, that would be it.
They did a good job keeping all these people like signed into these crazy contracts.
Yeah. Well, and I think the movies just kept doing well.
Right.
And they wanted to keep making that money.
But yeah, I agree with you. I was a little I was off put by the fact that it wasn't Terrence Howard anymore.
Yeah.
But now,
it took me a few movies to warm up to him, but now I'm all in on.
Well,
on Don
yeah.
Cheadle.
Now watching this movie again, having gone through all the other movies, gone through Infinity War, Endgame, etc., and loving Don Cheadle as War Machine, as Rhodey, watching Iron Man 1, I was like, I don't feel any connection to you, Terrence.
Yeah.
But then seeing this again, I was like, yes, okay, we're everything's right in the universe. But yeah, so Stark decides to drive his car in the Grand Prix, which is great. Yeah, you're a Formula One racer. Sure, my dude. And Venko.
I like how annoyed the driver
I
gets
do
too when he's on the TV and he's waving off.
And so Venko decides to just walk his way out onto this track, and
yeah, he's part of a pit crew or something. Is that what we're supposed to think?
He snuck into a pit crew with his whips under his jumpsuit, and he turns his whips on, and his jumpsuit
It's pretty
melts
dope
away.
how it burns through.
No, it is a pretty cool reveal. I mean, I don't think I needed to see Mickey Rourke's body.
Don't body shame Mickey Rourke. Wow.
I'm not shaming it. I just didn't want to see it.
Well, that's kind of shaming.
But he burns away his jumpsuit because his shit's too hot.
He's still got that bod from he was in The Wrestler a few years before that.
He looks like a knockoff Jack Sparrow is what he looks like with his hair, and
Yeah, I guess.
it's just anyways. But he
Imagine
starts.
Johnny Depp as Whiplash.
I'd be into it.
No, Johnny Depp is the worst.
Oh, okay. Well, I like Johnny Depp a little.
No.
Okay. And he starts whipping cars left and right and decides to go after Tony, obviously. Slices Tony's car basically in half, which I don't know if it's just the speed thing, but I feel like he could have just very easily killed Tony then and there.
Well, I mean, I think the crash landing in Iron Man, the first Iron Man in the desert, proves that Tony...
He's got plot armor.
Yeah. Well, he's a strong boy.
He's a strong boy. So he slices his car open, and I forgot he whipped it open first.
I love the girl's reaction too behind Justin Hammer. Her
little
yeah, she's way overacting.
Yeah, she's trying to get her big break. And Pepper and Happy realize what's going on and realize they need to get Tony a suit ASAP. And then there's a whole
why does Pepper need to go?
I don't know. But there's a whole zany back and forth of trying to get Pepper the key to the suit and trying to get
to the briefcase that has the suit. Yeah,
it's a whole thing, and Happy needs to drive on the track, and I feel so they pin Venko against the fence, and I feel
multiple times.
Yeah, I feel like Happy could just back up and just keep doing that.
Well, I think doing that once or twice would have
shattered his pelvis.
Yeah, although I think when he suits up for the first time and you see the
in the Mark V.
No, I'm talking about Venko.
Oh, okay.
He has some vertebrae shit on his back.
He does.
Is it hooked to his body?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that would be A, very extreme, but not out of the realm of possibility, and B, how could he do that from behind? How could he insert it into his own spine behind himself?
But when it's on him, you see it click into place, and it's I don't know. It just seems like it's attached to him.
No, I agree with you, and I guess I don't fully understand it, but
we don't understand you, Mickey Rourke.
He has a cool shot with some cars exploding behind him. But yeah, so they eventually end up getting Tony a suit. He's got a football nuclear briefcase situation, and in one of, I think the Mark V suit up is one of the coolest suit ups that Tony has before it goes to nanotech and stuff.
Well, and it's again a nod to the comics.
Is it?
Yeah, because originally Iron Man just carried around his armor in a briefcase.
Oh my god!
And would slip into it when but it was just a regular briefcase.
Yep.
But Tony didn't have an arc reactor, but he had to wear his whole chest plate under all of his clothes at all times.
Oh.
And the whole chest piece is what kept him alive.
Oh, okay.
And it did the same thing that the arc reactor did, but it was a whole chest piece. So in the briefcase were like his gloves and his boots, and he would Happy would hand it to him or whatever. He would take the briefcase and then suit up that way.
The way he puts it on in this is way better.
Well, yes, it's definitely a cooler, updated.
Yes,
but it's a nod to
cool.
that whatever. I do think that just the way that it like clinks on and all of that there's no way that he's not getting pinched and whatever. Like,
well, the fact that it like can just go around his like the clothing that he's wearing so easily, like all of that just seems a little Well,
he's like in a bulky jumpsuit because in his racing jumpsuit or whatever.
I mean, it's pretty incredible that we went from the expo where he had to have like robotic arms help him get it off.
Yeah.
To I can just put this on by myself and I don't have to be screwed into it.
Well, and I think this suit maybe is not as robust as
the other. It's just like
this is like his in case of emergency suit.
That makes sense. And he ends up dispatching Vanko pretty easily once he's got his suit on, of course.
Vanko gets him with the whips and he has to like fight back a little bit.
But he has a cool like moment of being like wrapped in the whips and like just walking towards him anyway. It's just like, fuck you. But so he ends up subduing Vanko enough that Vanko can be like taken in.
Yeah, and he rips the power source out of his chest or whatever.
So that Vanko can be taken in by the Monaco police. And we then get to go to like a kind of like softer scene where does Tony know like about Vanko the Elder and his dad?
I don't think so. I think
how he
finds out in the jail or whatever, or when he visits Vanko. Because he has no idea who the fuck this guy is.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I would have thought that he would have some idea of like the older Vanko and maybe just not the son, but I
don't think so because he didn't know that his dad even worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. at this point, and I don't think that
I think working for a covert secret operation is
but I think he was doing a lot of that with S.H.I.E.L.D. as far as developing the arc reactor and whatever. But
it would have been kind of cool.
Although he must have seen the blueprints for that, because how did he miniaturize it if he didn't understand how it was made? I don't know. But
it would have been cool to see in First Avenger or in something like Vanko somewhere.
Why do you want more Vanko?
I don't know, not this Vanko, old Vanko.
I know, but any Vanko.
To give it like an establishing anything. Like this is before Cap, right? Yes, this is Iron Man 2 is before Captain America. So
it came out before, the year before,
So I don't think it would be super out of the realm of possibility to like add that little breadcrumb in there.
Well, but I think it's also Vanko is helping him in the 60s or 70s. Like it's not necessarily.
But then he's also not like. I mean, it's mentioned that like Hydra is enveloped by S.H.I.E.L.D. and like some of Hydra's people go into S.H.I.E.L.D. like Zola, for example.
So I think he came in post World War II.
Right.
He wouldn't have been involved with them
right
until after the war. So I'm fine with no Vanko. The less Vanko, the better.
Like just a mention of his name.
Vanko.
I just like when they add those like world building.
Oh, I agree. That's why we're doing this whole fucking podcast is because we love the breadcrumbs.
Wait, what? Why are we doing this?
Because we like the.
I don't like these movies.
Oh.
So Tony kind of finds out, asks Anton like, "Why the fuck are you doing this? Like, what is going on with you
and your whips
and Vanko is like naked in the cell too on top of that.
Well, I think they're like he's being treated like a terrorist at this point, and
which for all things considered, most of the villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe could be characterized as terrorists.
The human
kind of terrorists. So they talk about how Vanko managed to like make this and what Vanko's like aim is, and Tony finds out about Vanko the Elder and how his dad kind of did a seedy thing. But he's also like still at the point of like thinking that his dad never loved him, still at the point of like not really having had a really great relationship with Howard sort of thing. So he just immediately takes Vanko kind of like at his word and is like, oh my God, another reason my dad's a shitbag. And finds out later from like Nick Fury that like, no, like your dad wasn't like as big of a shitbag as you think he is. And was trying like loved you a lot.
He was a poop bag. He wasn't a shitbag.
I don't think Samuel L. Jackson would ever say poop bag. Samuel L. Jackson would 100% say shitbag. But yeah, so after that, we get more of Tony really like losing control, really struggling with the palladium deal. And then we get some Justin Hammer deciding to throw his hat in the ring and break Vanko out of jail.
Well, yeah, at the Grand Prix, Tony, when he's talking to the reporter, blows that his contract has been suspended because of what happened at the Senate committee hearing.
Yes.
So Hammer is kind of, I think, at the point where he's going to explore any option, no matter what the ramifications are, because he just wants to beat Tony at any cost.
Which is a little like the flat jealousy of it is just a little infuriating.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same. Any of these villains, there's a point where they cross a line where it becomes like the movie needs them to be the villain, so they have to cross that line at some point. And when breaking Vanko out of jail and basically getting in bed with him. Is that point where it's like really like that's a little crazy for you to do that.
Yeah, but it's extreme. It's definitely like a hell of an extreme, and really it's stupid. I don't understand how Justin Hammer thought he was going to have any control over this guy. Like, there's no way.
Yeah. Well, and I guess it's back to his personality is that where he's going to try to spin whatever he can, and he's going to figure it out when he gets there, I guess. Right. And he's just not good at that.
And he's also like, he wants so badly to beat Tony and wants so badly to be a Tony like foil, but he also has a hell of a lot of like cockiness when he shouldn't. Yeah. And that's like his downfall. Like, he's cocky enough to think like, yeah, of course I can do this and control this guy and have him work for me. And it's like, no. Blows
up in his face. Well, and Tony has the cockiness, but he has like the goods to back it up, basically. And that's why this movie is called Iron Man 2, not Justin Hammer.
Justin Hammer, the hammering.
Hammer
That's why
Man.
Justin Hammer doesn't have an origin story. And then what's next? So
the movie's still going.
This movie's still a thing. So Justin Hammer wants, he sees what Vanko can do with this tech. He made an arc reactor, which is something that tripped up Obadiah. And so he thinks that Vanko could be the missing piece to, he's been trying to create Iron Man suits. Yeah. And so he's like, I want you to just make me Iron Man suits. And Vanko's like, sure, I do this. And it's
I want my
like,
bird.
I want my bird.
I want my bird.
I want my bird.
Why didn't you bring your fucking bird with you when you came to France?
I think he literally was planning on just like suiciding and killing Tony however he could. Then we kind of like, Tony goes back from Monaco and starts doing some research into who Anton Vanko is.
Yeah.
And it seems like pretty like it's, his dad is labeled as like he defected and went back to Russia. And then the Whiplash Mickey Rourke that we're dealing with has like been a criminal for a long time.
Yeah, he's like a renegade.
Has been in and out of prison, sort of thing. And he ending up, because Rhodey is yelling at him, of course, because he was an idiot. And he ends up having to tell Rhodey what's going on with his arc reactor.
Yeah. Well, Tony's, I think, is beating himself up more because he's sort of realizing maybe what his dad's legacy isn't what he thought it was, I guess.
Right.
And I think that all of that is sort of taking its toll on him. And then also he's slowly dying from his...
Yeah, he has to have Rhodey like actually change the cartridge for him. So like there's no way for Rhodey like to not know about it because Tony looks like shit during this whole scene. Like, he looks awful. And we eventually lead into Tony's birthday party, which is his very last birthday party, or so he thinks. Yeah. And he's like in like the next stage of like grief about his own death and is kind of in the like fuck it stage.
Yeah. Well, and Natasha says to him, or Tony asks her what she would do
with his very last like birthday, and she's like, well, I would do whatever the hell I wanted to. Yeah. So Tony gets absolutely wasted and ends up in his Iron Man suit. when he shouldn't be at his house and is like blowing things up and and pisses in his suit, which is, that scene is gross. I think that was just a little
it's shades of A Star Is Born. Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, it was a little too much that.
Yeah, well, and this is another nod to the in the 70s, Tony Stark became an alcoholic, or it was revealed that he was an alcoholic, and he did some similar kind of crazy things where he was unhinged. And
Tyler, it's okay. You're allowed to be a comic nerd. You're safe here.
It's not a direct adaptation of that story, but it's sort of just a nod to that, because that is a big part of who the character in the comics is. He's an addict and all that. So
that's just RDJ's life. So
well, yeah.
So he gets absolutely wasted, and Rhodey, who has just like finished bailing him out in front of the Senate again, ends up back.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he bailed.
He kind of called him off. He's doing a lot to cover Tony's back, like as much as he can, really. But it is getting to a point where Tony is being really reckless, and things are happening that are definitely terrorism. So, there's a very real in the real world, this wouldn't just be allowed to happen.
I think he does want the government to have, or at least he wants the military to have hit that technology so that they can start to combat some of these new threats.
Rhodey he's a solid, he's a soldier, and he definitely believes in why, the military and what he's not going to just be let's be a renegade. And that's why in Civil War, he's on the side of the Accords, sort of thing. But so he gets mad and ends up going down and grabbing one of Tony's other suits.
No big deal. He just grabs it.
Which kind of the fact that it had an arc reactor in it.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And the fact that it fits him, there's a lot of things to it that didn't make sense.
He definitely got pinched.
He's so much pinching. That's why he's so mad.
Yeah, well, maybe. But yeah, I can buy him getting in the suit maybe because he's seen Tony get in and out of them maybe, but just the fact that it has
an arc reactor in it.
Something to power, because all of the suits are powered by Tony's arc reactor, so he wouldn't need to have
that was definitely the thing that tripped me up the hardest. I was hang on,
there needed to be some dialogue or something to come across, but that wouldn't make sense anyway, because Tony doesn't want anyone else to have these, so why would he have a power source for someone else? There might be
the kind of thing where if he thinks that he's dying and this is going to be the end for him, maybe he started building Rhodey.
Then he should have talked to Rhodey about it.
I guess, but that's the only thing that could maybe make sense, but even that doesn't make sense.
But I think the point is they needed to set that up a little bit more, but they wanted there to be a reveal of him in the suit.
Right.
Where if they set it up, then you would know that it was coming.
They needed War Machine. Which this party is also a really interesting scene because the DJ, who was actually a pretty big DJ at the time.
Yeah, he died before this movie came out, right? Yeah,
he died pretty quickly after filming. He was in a plane crash with Travis Barker from Blink-182 and died.
Was Travis Barker in the plane?
Yes, Travis survived. Yeah.
Weird.
Isn't that fucking weird?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rhodey and Tony fight. I have a big, which again, the other part to this too is that it took Tony a long time to figure out flying around and how to use everything. And Rhodey's just yep.
Well, and Rhodey's a pilot, I guess.
But yeah. Pilots don't fly with their hands, Tyler. There's a little bit of
Well, this whole movie is
a big suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
And they end up fighting, and kind of at the end, they Ghostbusters cross the streams, and Tony ends up flying off, and Rhodey ends up flying off to the Air Force and takes the suit with him. Obviously, that's how he flew. He gives this tech to the Air Force, to the Army, without Tony's consent.
Yeah.
Basically just takes it, is fed up with Tony and what Tony's doing, and it's well, I'm going to take this into my own hands. And meanwhile, Tony ends up meeting Nick Fury and finding out that Natalie is Natasha and is actually Black Widow.
And her hair starts to get curlier and curlier as the movie goes on.
Curlier and curlier. I don't like her super curly hair, personally.
Well, I think her hair in general doesn't make much sense for her, all the whipping around she's going to do later on.
No. But yeah, so they kind of explain, and they give him a little like magical shot of something to like reverse the effects of palladium, but not actually cure him. I don't know, but they end up confining Tony.
But it fixes his veins or whatever somehow. Which
I feel like the vein situation was because the palladium was in his veins. So if it's just reversing the symptoms, is that not I don't know.
Yeah.
And so S.H.I.E.L.D. ends up confining Tony to his house. But this is also where Nick has the time where he tells Tony, yeah, your dad wasn't a shitbag. Like that his dad was working on something. And this is like our hint to the Tesseract, even though we don't know it yet. Because that's the basic core power of the Ark, isn't it? The Ark reactor?
Well, that's where, I think, just in studying the Tesseract, that's where Howard was able to extrapolate and build it. I don't know if it's not powered by the Tesseract, but it's like using they studied the Tesseract and were able to create this technology. And kind of like on this, like during this time, like Rhodey has to like, Justin Hammer comes to the military and is like trying to get back his military contracts and shows them all these different weapons sort of thing. And it's a really like silly little scene. And then he gets access to the suit that Rhodey brought to. But Rhodey keeps the arc reactor.
He does keep the arc reactor. But he then makes some modifications to it to make the actual like war machine suit with like the gun on the shoulder and the whole like deal.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Tony is kind of like looking at his dad's old journals, trying to figure out the energy thing that Nick Fury was talking about. And is watching like old movies of like Howard but they're like behind the scenes.
Yeah. It's like the raw footage from the reel that he played at the expo at the beginning.
Right. So it turns out that Howard recorded Tony a personalized message.
Yeah.
Of course he did, which I don't understand. Like, why would you record that and then not have it somewhere for Tony to like find?
Well, I wonder if it was left with S.H.I.E.L.D.
Maybe.
And I mean, Howard wasn't planning on dying when he did. So I think it might have been, it was in Howard's belongings or whatever.
Right.
So.
But so he has a personalized message to Tony and tells him that he has to continue the work with the energy thing, and also tells him that his best creation was Tony. It was a good way to do it without like having Howard Stark say like I love you, like, because that wouldn't have made sense like at all.
Because he didn't.
Well, just because, like, Tony,
I get it.
Tony very much says, like, 100 million times, like, my dad never told me he loved me.
Yeah.
Like, but that was a good way of that feeling coming across.
Looking at this and then the scene in Endgame with them, I think it's a nice...
Yeah.
It sort of connects that in a way where this is sort of the beginning of Tony getting closure with his dad.
Right.
And it takes him a while to get there, but he ends up sort of working his way through it.
And this is definitely where his attitude towards his dad turns. Like, he realizes, like... I think he sees that he's doing himself what his dad did, like working a ton.
Well, he's starting to feel that burden.
Right.
And that's what's sort of not ruining his life, but it's becoming right now he's not coping with it, and it's becoming an issue. So
Tony gets inspired, and he has a bit of like a scene where he's supposed to be locked down in his house, and of course isn't actually.
Yeah.
Like, manages to escape and go see Pepper, who has like not even 10 seconds for him.
Well, she's been putting out fires for him left and right.
Right.
So
and he ends up taking the actual like miniature expo map that like his dad had in his video
that was
thing.
In the background of the video.
And decide, like Howard said in the personalized message, that I built the expo for you. And Tony realizes that his dad has left.
To the element or whatever. Which that is, we talked a little bit about Howard Stark being sort of a Walt Disney type, but the whole notion of the map and the city of the future and all of that stuff is that Walt Disney's, like, one of the last things that he was working on was Epcot, which is it's an amusement park, but it originally was supposed to be the city of the future, and people were supposed to live there and work there, and it was going to be this whole like super community. It's a little bit of a different thing in this, but I definitely got a hint at that or whatever. What they were going for.
And of course, Tony uses his like super computer technology to like create a map of it and be able to like twist it and take elements out, sort of thing. It's like, how did Howard expect him to figure it out without him being able to do that? You know. But he does say, he says the technology of my time can't do this, but maybe the technology of your time. Yeah. So, I mean,
and I think you see a lot of Tony Stark's hardware, but all of the software that he develops with like the hacking technology and all of that, that's like another major part of why his tech works better than some of the other imposters and stuff, because they may have the hardware, but they don't have the software or whatever. So I think that's kind of cool.
And so then when Tony has this new element to like go off of, that Jarvis is immediately like, yeah, this will work instead of palladium. Like,
but he says that it's impossible.
It's impossible to synthesize.
And Tony's like, okay, let's get to work.
Yeah. So Tony is like, okay, so I'll just make this by hand then. Which I like the montage scene of Tony like tearing apart his house to create this new reactor. It's something that like, now that we're so deep into the universe and like the Iron Man movies came out very quickly in terms of this universe, like they're all front loaded at the front. I really like seeing Tony like create, like watching Iron Man 1 and watching this, like,
it's like you said, when we get into the later Avengers, it's just taken for granted that he's gonna create some crazy new technology.
We see some cool creation stuff in Age of Ultron, but like we don't get a lot after that, really.
Yeah. Well, but he just has it all too. It's you don't ever see him developing any of the nano suit stuff and all of that.
Which I just realized that I just really loved watching him create this stuff. It felt just so him.
But it's something that kind of only fits in a solo movie too, because you're with him 99% of the time in the movie.
Right. I do like how in Age of Ultron he's doing it with Bruce, and a little bit in original Avengers how he's doing it with Bruce. Like I like that
Science
makes
bros.
Science bros. So in this he ends up creating his reverse Illuminati arc reactor, the Triangle Boy. What mark suit is that?
6.
6?
Yes.
We jump from 6 to like 106, don't we?
No, it goes from 6 to 42.
That's a lot.
No, 7 is in Avengers, and then 42 is in Iron Man 3. But then you see all the other suits in between.
And we also get in this moment, which I love that Coulson's the one to like see it, is Cap's shield. Another prototype of Cap's shield.
Like a weird, flimsy, plasticky looking shield, but
Well, his Cap's actual shield is in the ice.
Yeah.
Which is why Coulson's like, what is this? Like, but I love it. It made me happy.
Well, and it's funny. I think at the time we knew that the Captain America movie was coming out, and so like Coulson puts this weight on it, and then Tony's like, "Oh, I need that," and you're like, "Oh shit, what's this gonna do?" And then he's just like uses it as a shim to hold the pipe up or whatever.
Which is totally how he ends up like treating Steve later. Like, whatever, just prop me up. There's a little bit of a point where it's becoming obvious that Vanko is not doing what Justin wants him to do, because Vanko is attempting to create drones, not Iron Man suits, and Justin Hammer doesn't want any of that, but decides to kind of like roll with it anyways because he's given Rhodey's suit that he took, so he kind of has a suit.
Well, and I like when he goes with his assistant and he gives him the bird or whatever, and they're looking at Justin like notices the new drones or the suits at this point, and they don't have the full helmets. They've got the drone tops or whatever.
And he's like, "Can you fit your head in this?"
and his
try and put it on.
His assistant is like trying to put it on. He's like, "Nope, I can't do it." Like,
I really liked that scene too.
And watching that scene, I started to like picture a movie with just the two of them, like an Iron Man movie where that old guy is Pepper and like they have this like obviously a different relationship, but he's his girl Friday, and
it was I really liked that point. I thought that was really funny. And he's just like, Jack, what is this? Jack, put it on.
Can you put that on your head?
Can you put that? I can't put that on my head. So what's going on?
And Vanko's not even paying attention.
No,
he does not give a shit.
Drones are better. But so kind of like the beginning of Act 3, I guess I would call it, is when Hammer presents at the Stark Expo. And he reveals all these drones that Vanko's made, and has some for the Army, has some for the Navy, has some for the Marines. Like there are different possibilities. And then the last thing that it reveals is Rhodey in the new War Machine suit.
Pepper is not happy.
No, Pepper's pissed. Which
Pepper pissed.
Her name's an alliteration for that. Pepper Potts pissed.
Too far.
Too far, is it?
Yep.
PPP?
PPP.
And of course, Justin Hammer does not have control over the situation, and Vanko's using his gross little nails back at Hammer Corp to...
Well, and Tony knows that Vanko is up to something.
Because Vanko called him.
Yeah.
Vanko called him and says, I'm coming for you. And Tony's like, the fuck?
So Rhodey
because they thought Vanko was dead until this point.
Oh, because of the explosion at the
right.
Yeah. So then Tony crashes the party. And Rhodey at first is not happy. He thinks that Tony's gonna do something crazy, but
really Tony's trying to get everybody out of the expo. And turns out that Vanko can control not only these drones, but B, Rhodey's suit.
Yeah.
Which I got like a real claustrophobic feeling watching that, like being trapped in this suit and not being able to control it and having it do all these things and your body having to move while it's doing that. It freaked me out just thinking about that.
Well, and there's a similar moment in Civil War when Rhodey gets blasted by Vision and he's like,
oh God, that scene scares me. Well, and then again in Endgame, which post-Civil War, Rhodey's crippled and can't really walk without his suit or without the stuff that he wears, the pants that he wears or whatever.
His special pants.
His special pants. It's like an exoskeleton. It's not the pants, but...
no, they're special pants.
Special pants. But in Endgame, when the compound's destroyed and he's trapped, the suit's malfunctioning and he can't
get up because
of his legs. But at least the suit in that, he can say canopy and that it opens for him so he can at least get out of it. But like, I can just imagine like after this situation, he's like saying to Tony, like, get me a way to get out of this suit when I need to. But so there's a whole big fight of Tony like trying not to fight Rhodey because Rhodey's obviously in the War Machine suit.
Well, he's drawing all of the firepower away from the expo too because they're all shooting at him. Right.
And he's trying to defeat all the drones, and he and Rhodey are able to have communication, so Rhodey can be like, I've got like a lock on you. So like they're trying to work together. And Natasha and Happy are breaking into Hammer Industries.
Yes.
Which I love that scene. It's a good scene.
Well, I'm glad you love it.
Really?
I just think it's like a little too like walking on the catwalk and getting like it's all like she does one cool thing and then like poses for a second and then does another cool thing and then poses like
the part that I just really loved with Happy at the end, like I got him.
Oh yeah, and then he looks and sees all the bodies that she's wiped out.
That's the part that I liked, I guess, is that part. Which wasn't Jon Favreau? He was like a boxer or something before a director, right? So
well, and he one of the movies that he made before this was, he didn't direct it, but I think he wrote it, was a boxing movie called Made.
Okay.
And he's plays a boxer in that.
Yeah. So I mean, I just like seeing Happy get like a little bit more time to shine, I guess, in which some people say that like a director inserting themselves into their own movie is really just like self-centered and stuff. But I think that the way that Jon Favreau does
he definitely plays it in an interesting way where he's not like swooping in and saving Scarlet Witch, Scarlett Johansson. And it's played more for comedy where he's like, thinks that he's
helping,
like, badass and helping. And then he sees that he's just a bumbling dude.
But so they end up being able to at least stop Rhodey's suit from being out of his control.
Yeah, Natasha's also a world-class hacker.
I mean, you can do like 2 keyboards. You can just like click it away, like a whole bunch. Have you ever seen that scene in NCIS where like...
Motherfucker, I do not watch NCIS.
there's a scene, but just like a really
Yes,
bad
I've seen
hacking
that
scene.
meme where there's like 4 hands on the keyboard.
Yes,
clicking or
they're
whatever.
on the same keyboard, and he's like, move over, and so they can type on both sides of the keyboard.
Yeah.
It's the stupidest thing.
Yes, it's NCIS. Why are you watching NCIS?
I don't watch NCIS. I've just seen that scene as an example of bad hacking. Okay. Stop shaming me.
You shamed Mickey Rourke. I'm just... it's retribution for Rourke.
So Tony and Rhodey get their cool, like, scene of, like, killing all the Autobots.
Autobots roll out.
And Tony gets to do his cool, like, laser show that he can only do once.
Why doesn't he just pack more of those cartridges?
I don't know.
Yeah, I like the setup too, where Tony's just like has no fucking clue, and Rhodey's like, you can't be down here. This is the kill box or whatever. And then they bicker for a second, and then they all drop down and they're trapped down there. This
is also just where he and Don Cheadle get like a good time to just like super banter. Like they're not mad at each other. They're like kind of at a level playing field. And
superhero banter.
Yeah, I just liked it a lot. I thought it was they got good chemistry. And so then Vanko drops down, of course, with more whips. And
he's got a full suit now.
He's got a full suit now.
Because Iron Man.
Because they need to have another Iron Man. And I feel like they just dispatched him like, no big deal.
Yeah. Like you said, his goal was to suicide himself at the
Vanko is not like
Grand
out
Prix,
here
so
to
that's
do anything
what he's
other
doing
than,
now.
Just kill himself to kill Tony. But it just felt super anticlimactic. Like it was just like, really, that's it, my dude.
Well, and especially like looking at the other movies, how they ramp things up a lot more,
right?
And
which I understand, this is like one of the beginning movies. They can't take it to an extreme level, but it just felt like both Justin Hammer and Vanko didn't have there wasn't a lot of stakes. Like they were kind of easily dispatched. Like very quickly.
Yeah.
Like he had a little trouble at the Grand Prix, but not very much trouble. And this point when it was him and Rhodey,
and I think Tony's greatest enemy in this movie is himself, really, and that's what he needs to contend with, is accepting sort of his place and getting rid of some of those destructive tendencies, and that I think is the overall arc. And the villains are there. Vanko and Hammer are there just to sort of amp things up a little bit and ratchet things up, but it's really more about Tony's story, and that's ultimately why I'm watching this dang movie, is for Tony.
Right. I do like the one of the little things that Justin Hammer built up is this little missile that's
the ex-wife.
The ex-wife that's gonna not only eradicate a building, but it'll eradicate the bunker under the building. And super builds it up. And so when Vanko drops down, Rhodey's like, I got this crazy stupid little missile.
Wouldn't that blow if it was gonna do what Hammer said it would?
They would have died too.
Well, I know.
The entire expo would have blown. But I love that it just tinks off his armor and fizzles out. And Tony's just Hammer tech. It was just a funny another just smack at Justin Hammer. But yeah, so Vanko decides I'm not going to kill you, but I'm going to try and kill you by committing suicide.
Well, he thinks he's going to kill him. Yeah.
Right. By detonating his suit. Basically, it's just a big nuclear bomb. And it doesn't work again. Tony and Rhodey just fly off, and Tony just grabs Pepper and flies away, and it just seemed to wrap up very neatly.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they have their rooftop.
Right. Which I love when they get on the rooftop and they're having their little back and forth, and then they finally kiss, which felt right. It felt like it was meant to happen. And then Rhodey is just ew. You look like
I wanted Rhodey to be sitting there eating some popcorn or something, because he's just kind of sitting back, watching the show.
What does he say? He's you look like two seals fighting over a grape or something like that. And he's I was here first. This
is my roof.
Yeah, my roof. Find your own roof. But yeah, so they kind of wrap it up all neatly in a little bow. Justin Hammer's arrested. So I guess there might be potential. No, there's not potential.
We do see him again.
We do.
We do.
Oh, that's right. We do.
in one of the shorts,
Right.
he is in prison. It's post Iron Man 3, so you see Travis Slattery,
Yep.
the Mandarin, and Justin Hammer, and it's like a little vignette of them in prison or whatever.
I forgot about that. And Rhodey and Tony are given medals by the senator who hates both of them.
Yeah.
And
I think I wouldn't mind seeing Hammer in another
movie.
in another movie,
Well,
whether it's like a Ironheart, young
Right.
Iron Man kind of thing. And
I was just about to say, like, there's a possibility he could come back, and then I remembered the end of Endgame. So I was
yeah,
like, hey,
well,
that's
obviously he's not going to deal with Tony anymore, but I think
Right.
he could fit a younger character as
Yeah.
as sort of the foil.
Morgan Stark, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that. And the movie ends with Nick Fury and Tony talking about the Avengers initiative and Natasha's breakdown of Iron Man as a potential Avenger, who she thinks Iron Man would be great, but maybe not Tony.
Which I think is a little bit silly because reads to me like maybe Robert hasn't signed his contract yet and they're trying to leave the door open for a Iron Man, maybe
Right.
just not the Iron Man.
Right.
And
I thought they were kind of like leaving it open for like maybe not you, but maybe like Rhodey could pilot your suit or something.
I think that's the implication, but it also imagine an Avengers movie without Tony Stark. Like
that's
he
silly.
is the literal heart of the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
So
And I do like how Nick Fury is like, well, you could consult for us, and Tony's like, you can't afford me.
well, but he does end up doing that when
Right.
we see him at the end of Hulk. But I don't know. I think it's a little convenient, and I think it's more just to sort of highlight that maybe like you've come a long way, Tony, but like
You really
still have some more work to do.
Right.
But there really is no change from Tony in this movie at the end of this movie to Avengers.
No, and that's
They're just kind of like,
that's the
well,
point that
actually,
I was gonna,
we do kind of want you now.
Yeah,
Like
that's a point that I was going to bring up to you is like, I can't think of, because after this we've got Incredible Hulk, at least, well, not timeline-wise. Timeline-wise, we had Thor next and Cap and
yeah, the
Avengers.
only movies in between, the only time we see Tony before Avengers is Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. So there's really not like time for them to have like redefine their decision, but obviously when the New York starts getting attacked, like
Yeah, well, and Coulson comes, and I like that scene in Avengers where he's briefing him or whatever. In that scene too and when Tony's talking to Nick Fury, you see the map behind him. It's like a digital screen or whatever.
Yep.
That's got a bunch of little Easter eggy things. You see, it's basically a map of the world or whatever, and you see little blips. And there's a blip where Cap is in ice. There's a blip in New Mexico where Thor is. There's a blip in Harlem where Hulk is.
Okay.
And then you see some other blips too that at the time we weren't sure, but there's some in like Eastern Europe, which may be Hydra.
Right.
Or there's some question about when the twins were taken and experimented on.
Yep.
Because if the scepter is what gave them their power, they wouldn't have been experimented on until after Avengers. But it's never like explicitly stated. I think they could have been experimented on, and there's a sort of a theory that maybe they were supposed to be Inhumans and their powers were activated.
Oh, okay.
Blah blah blah. But Inhumans were sort of dropped from sort of the whole equation anyway. But so the potentially there's nods to that, and then there's a blip on Wakanda too.
What's the blip off of South America?
That potentially could be Namor, who's like an underwater dude.
Oh, they kind of made reference to that in Endgame.
In Endgame,
right?
that's
With
what the people
tremors.
are speculating, that the earthquakes underground or are under the ocean or whatever.
That's cool. I didn't.
So
even
I think
notice
that's just a kind of a cool world building thing, and it just helps sort of tie things in.
Yeah.
The earlier movies in a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I see Wakanda. That's cool.
yeah, and then from there we go to the metal scene where Tony gets to do one last fuck you to the senator, and
because they want him to pin the medal on.
Yeah. He makes Fury calls in a favor or whatever to have him do that. But
I love that we see the senator again in Winter Soldier.
Well,
and
and Gary Shandling is awesome. He is.
He's got quite the face.
Yeah. Well, I think he's got some work done or something here.
Yeah.
But
He definitely he plays the part that he is in these movies very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so then we go into a very blank credit scene because the nice credits were done they weren't even nice. They were Anton Banco. But they were done at the beginning of this movie.
The beginning. There was no main on ends in this movie.
So we go to a very just black crawl like right away.
Yeah. Definitely was jarring because I think all the movies,
all of them have a cool
some kind of
beginning
a cool
sequence,
graphical ending.
And we have one post-credit scene again, which we see Agent Coulson, who was kind of reassigned from Tony.
We see it when he leaves Tony, he says he's been reassigned
to New Mexico.
New Mexico.
And so we see him pulling up
Land of Enchantment.
to his new assignment in New Mexico, and it's a teaser for Thor. Yeah, because it's Thor's hammer just in the middle of like a alien.
It's actually that whole sequence is an outtake from Thor.
Yeah.
And it was shot by Kenneth Branagh, who directed Thor.
Oh, really?
So it has, like, if you notice when we see Coulson, it's at a canted angle, which there's a lot of those shots in Thor because he went for that sort of style. Yeah.
And there's a nice little thunder crack as it goes black to really drive home that it's, if you didn't recognize Mjolnir, which even as someone who wasn't a Marvel fan, I know Thor as the Norse mythology god. Yeah. So I recognize Mjolnir pretty quickly.
Well, and just seeing kind of the path that Mjolnir takes through the movies and how important it becomes.
They're teasing Endgame in this movie.
Well, but I like how there was always a weight to the hammer. But it's sort of up there with the stones as far as how powerful it is and all that. And it's sort of treated in a similar
Which is why it's so fucking intense when Hela breaks it. Yeah. Holy shit. That still fucks me up. And then we have, again, 2 deleted scenes. The first one is basically just an extra add-on to the Senate scene where we get a reintroduction to Coulson, which I feel like it was just kind of fluff. Yeah. I like the Senate scene how it was, and I don't think
Coulson was at the Senate hearing? Is that what?
Yeah, he's at the Senate hearing, and Pepper notices him and goes up to Tony and is like, I'm gonna go see what Coulson thinks about this. And he's like, okay, well, I need chili dogs. And she's like, okay. And so she
Give
goes,
me chili dogs, bitch.
And Justin Hammer is in the middle of his monologue about why Iron Man is dangerous, et cetera, et cetera. And they just kind of pepper in her going going to talk to Coulson and being like, can you help him with this at all? And Coulson's like, no. And she's like, okay, well, I have to go get chili dogs. And he's like, well, go to this restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's and she's like, yeah, that's the restaurant Tony sent me to. So it's just, it just was unnecessary little fluff to bring Coulson back sooner that I don't think was necessary. And the second scene is at Tony's birthday, and he's got Natasha wearing the gauntlet and shooting some things. And it's just really unnecessary, super sexual tension because it's a lot of innuendos until she shows the gauntlet.
When you said gauntlet at first, I thought you meant the Infinity Gauntlet, and I was like, what the fuck? What?
Well, the title of the scene is Natalie wears the gauntlet, and that was the first thing that I thought too. I was like, the fuck? But it's just it's really just a reason to make Pepper jealous is all that scene is. It's not super necessary. So yeah, the deleted scenes are a little
sparse. They were deleted for a reason.
Not necessary. But so yeah, so that's Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2.
Tony Ironman on a scale of 1 to 6 Avengers. What do you give this movie, Tyler?
I'm going 3 Avengers on this.
3 whole Avengers. Yeah. Wow.
I didn't hate this movie.
I don't love this movie.
I just movied this movie.
I'm gonna I'm probably at a solid 2 Avengers.
Benko really did a number on you, huh?
He did a number on me, and it's just I don't know. Some of it just feels like a filler movie.
Yeah, well, I think they were a little bit treading water because they were setting things up, but they still were kind of unsure about where they were going to end up, and they didn't want to blow their Avengers load too
especially
quickly.
Watching it in this chronological order, right after Iron Man. It was very just meh. It just feels it's more of the same, but it's not as good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was like great parts with like his interaction with his like people.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of key things that happen to build his character, and it's definitely worth watching. It's just not one that...
to watch. I just didn't really super love it, I guess.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah, but that's Iron Man 2.
Yeah. What's next, Courtney?
Actually, there's something else next before that, but what's next is unfortunate. God damn it.
What the fuck is next?
It's the Incredible Hulk.
Incredible.
The not so Incredible Hulk. Next episode, we'll be talking about the Incredible Hulk, a movie I've only ever seen once. Probably my least.
Oh man, it's a good one.
Well, I
can't wait.
Maybe I'll like it more this time.
I think there's some. I mean, it sets up some things. You got some Thunderbolt Ross. You got Tony Stark for 30 seconds.
Great. Is Cap in it?
Nope.
Fuck. Okay.
Cap's not even a afterthought in this movie. Actually, there's a hint of to Cap, but that's about it. We'll get into that more.
Okay. Well.
Tune in next time on Marveling.
I'm Courtney.
I'm Tyler. Yeah, he didn't have. He was like the wacky waving tube man. They're like, we're going to give you a nice sturdy skeleton.